I don't actually want to be dead. I actually just cannot cope with my reality being like this anymore. And I will do whatever it takes to have a different reality, even if that means being part of the earth again.
So I've wanted to die because of physical pain before, but then I've also wanted to because I just couldn't handle things mentally.
So without a home to go to, it's kind of pretty, I don't know, miserable, really. So no place to go makes you not want to be any place.
It's not meant to hurt their family. It's not meant to hurt anyone else. It's them saying, I'm putting my white flag up. I can't do this anymore.
I think to a certain degree he did it to protect us.
His girls.
His girls, because he thought he couldn't provide for us anymore, or couldn't do the things he wanted to do for us.
I didn't just lose my dad that day, I lost my mum as well. 23 years later, I still have not got her back. She never recovered.
When I was a teenager, one of the GPs that I went to see, took me a long time to kind of get the courage up to go and see that GP and to open up and tell them what was going on for me. And the first time I went in, I started to talk about it and they cut me off and said, sorry, we don't have time for this in this appointment. You'll need to make another appointment. It'd probably taken me a year to get the courage to go there and talk about it.
I was lucky, I guess, when Mum and I, we learned together how hard it can be to get support for mental health when you're really struggling. We both had some very memorable nights, especially back in the younger years, of desperately trying to get me help of any kind that was actually going to do something.
Same. The 2 a.m. pickups.
Yeah.
We're not admitting you, Aaron. You need to go home.
Yeah.
It can be really hard for someone to convey why they're feeling a certain way, particularly with suicide and suicidal behaviours.
It is incredible how many presentations I had to hospital, both as an adolescent and an adult. No one once went, wow, you've been through quite a bit.
Yeah. I know for a lot of me, it was a history that I just didn't understand. Like, the environment I grew up in, I thought was normal. It was actually quite a long time of being involved in the mental health system as a patient before someone actually went, you know what, you've actually had a really horrendous childhood and teenage years. Do you want to talk about that? And what do you mean?
You know, you ring your doctor, or you go to your doctor and you say, look, I'm feeling suicidal, I need help now, and then they tell you it's a 6-month wait to see a psychologist. Like, that's just, like, what do you do in those 6 months, you know? You want to die now.
The day he suicided, there was not even a locum doctor in town, no police in town. I rang different services numbers I vaguely remembered, and honestly, there was just no support. And to try and, it's not like a child you can take, because everyone said take him to the hospital, but it's not like a child that you can pick up and take to a hospital. I finally did get him he would agree to see a counsellor, but the only one he would see was a marriage counsellor. And I thought, well, that is better than anything. As long as I can get him to some professional help. Unfortunately, we had to wait 6 weeks for an appointment, and that was the only appointment I could get in our region. So I got a phone call the day before we buried him that there was an appointment available, and I said, I'm sorry, it's too late.
Even when I've accessed, I've gone to a GP, I've been misgendered quite a lot. And no matter how many times I'll say to them, I'm non-binary, I prefer they, them pronouns. I've had them turn around and say to me, oh, well, we're not going to pander to that here. And so, I mean, I'm not going to go to that GP and ask them for help then, am I?
When I rang, I can't remember what I said to them, but essentially they sent out the police alone. And I think if there's one message I can get across today is do not send the police out alone. I mean, if they're there to support the ambulance because someone's dangerous, you know, I'm totally fine with that. But reasoning with them rather than just slamming them into the ground and shoving their face into the dirt and handcuffing them.
The helplines that I did ring were just not connected with what being rural. They just had no idea that we've got no one, we've got nothing. And it really did make me feel very, very alone, like just very isolated.
Aren't there meant to be helplines, but they were not helpful?
Yeah. Mine is full of
KFC.
You know, I don't like going to an emergency department, but sometimes that's you know, your last choice. It's not the best place to be going to when you're in a crisis or, you know, when you're feeling suicidal.
Then when I got there, I was kind of questioned like, well, why are you here? What do you expect us to do about it? I had a nurse, you know, when I'm in the emergency room and I'm being seen, say like, why should I help you? Like, why should I help you if you don't even want to be here?
When the people that I'm meant to help are turning you away, it makes, well for me especially, it makes me feel like more of a burden because the people whose job is literally to help you aren't helping you.
Derogatory comments in hospital, you know, terms like frequent flyer or greyhound traveller, going round and round, you're just going to come back. You know, they're just, do you think I want to be here? Do you not think that I'd rather be out partying with the rest of my friends? You know, I'm doing this because I need help and I don't know how to get the help effectively.
You probably don't get looked down on, but you feel like everyone's tiptoeing around you.
Like you're getting judged.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes you might need to go to the emergency department twice in a month, and that second time you're walking through those doors, you just feel so nervous and you feel like they're going to be like, oh, her again. And like if you broke your arm twice in a month, you wouldn't feel like that.
You've got nurses who are in high stress environments. They don't have time to sit down and talk. They don't have time to listen. But that's exactly what you need. You need someone to listen.
No question, in hospital you have no control over anything really. You know, you're told to eat at a particular time, which I really hate. You can't go anywhere. You know, you can go to the toilet and that's it. You can't get any sun. You can't do anything. Like, it's pretty bad. Just the speed at which the whole process moves. This is very, very slow. And when you're, I guess what you'd call in crisis mode, in every minute seems like eternity.
Like the setting really is really distressing, I guess. I think being in a room where I'm not allowed a phone charger or they take my pens away. Even things like not even having a proper door to shower behind. It's those kind of things. I think when someone doesn't trust me with like the basic things, it really makes me feel really belittled, and that's one thing that's a really big trigger for me. If I'm honest, I wasn't ready to go home, but I just couldn't handle being there anymore. So to get out, I pretty well lied through my teeth. I was willing to let my partner manage my medications and to see my GP regularly. I was willing to do that, but I just had to get out of there. And then maybe a month later, same thing again, tried again.
Even as somebody who, you know, went and got help willingly, my choices were taken away from me. I was given very limited choices. It was, okay, so either you go home or we're going to give you some really strong medication to knock you out. I would ask, like, can I see a psychologist or a psychiatrist? Like, can I access some help? I was kind of seen as demanding. Like, you're lucky to be here. Like, you're lucky to be given a space here. Don't ask for more. I was supposed to stay there for a couple of weeks. And after 2 days, I left of my own accord because it was not at all useful to me.
I think there's a lot of fear around self-harm and liability and duty of care and using these big phrases and words that really, they don't have a place. You just need to care for someone.
I find it really condescending for a therapist to recite certain tests or questions that you can clearly see are not off their own thought processes. It can just be really intimidating and sort of like an artificial checkbox that you have to tick for them to speak to you.
To explore the context of what's going on, to explore the intensity of it, without it literally just sitting down with a clipboard and a pen and just going, you know, so do you have any plans? Have you finalised any details? What methods would you use? You know, it's just, you can do that. If you know what information you're looking for, but you can ask that in a way that actually focuses on a human, not on a pre-created form.
for my daughter, who hasn't even been in the system that many times, it was so fucking clear to her as one of the things she wanted to share. Like, how about just have a conversation with me and talk to me like a person? Don't read off the questions, because I know what you're going to ask, but then I feel like you're not present to me. You know, you hear language like high chronic risk of suicide, like, yes, like, yes, for a long time this person has been struggling with their trauma and does not feel safe, but the language that we use is really quite disempowering.
Each different psychiatrist comes along with their own label, and it's kind of, after a while, it just becomes a joke, you know, and you just don't even take them seriously anymore. It's like, so which one do I listen? I think I've said this to a psychiatrist before. It's like, well, the last psychiatrist said this, and the one before that said that. So which one of you do I listen to? You know, you've all said 3 different things. So, and they're all contradictory. So which one should I listen to?
There's a big difference between coming up with a plan yourself and having somebody else impose something on you. So something like a risk assessment sounds like something that someone else has done, to be like, here is the risk and here is what other people will do about it. And that can be, I think that can be disempowering sometimes if it's not done very well. Whereas something that's more like a safety plan, that it's collaborative and you feel like you've come up with that with support's good. That feels very different.
And I just did it with one of the, I guess, nurses there. She was a good nurse, so she just sat down with me for probably about an hour or more, and we just worked through a very comprehensive safety plan, because some of them are just, you know, like 3 paragraphs and not really anything substantial, but this one was very in-depth. It took up a couple of pages and just made me sort of evaluate everything. And she was understanding and, you know, tolerant, and sat there with me through the whole thing.
I feel like people can sometimes assume that you're more dangerous, or that you're a violent person or something like that, when you're not. It's just sometimes you just don't process things the right way, or your reactions can be more extreme, but it doesn't mean you're violent or that you're dangerous or scary or anything like that. But I feel like it's just the way it gets looked at sometimes.
So my GP sent referrals to, I don't know, 5 to 10 psychiatrists, and once they read that you've got borderline personality disorder, they don't want anything to do with you. They just reject your referral.
A lot of the interactions that we can have in the mental health sector, you know, we can have a lot of good interactions, but the ones that are most harmful are the ones that stay with us. When I was on a community treatment order, after I'd been discharged from hospital, I had a rural social worker who would come and see me. I don't remember any of the conversations I had with her except this one time. We were having a conversation about what did I want my life to look like when I came back to the city and when I was recovering. So I said, well, I really want to go back to my life the way it was. I want to go back to studying at university. I want to graduate. I want to become a psychologist. I want to work. I want to live on my own. I want to do what I was doing before. And she straight up said to me, people like you can't do that. People like you can't do that. You won't be able to cope anymore. Not after this. And I literally felt my life fall apart. I was recovering from psychosis. I was on so many different meds. I was like a shred of who I was. And a big part of that shred was, I'm gonna get through this because I know I've got a purpose and that's my passion. And she just was like, let go of that because you can't do that. And that is the only interaction I remember having with her. And I remember crying for hours and hours and hours after that, which was weird because I was on antipsychotic medication. I didn't feel anything.
The effect that it has on you when a clinician or, social worker, support worker, whatever, when they do something harmful, it shatters you because they're the people you go to. You go to them for help and then they shut you down and you're like, well, why? What have I, and then you internalize it. You're like, what have I done? What have I done wrong to them? Why are they treating me like that?
Talk about dehumanising, invalidating and just destroying a person in a moment. I wanted to get out of there just to get away from that. because that feeling of powerlessness, that sort of stuff isn't captured. Right? What do you do when you suffer stuff like that with people who are in these really strong positions of power and you have nothing?
Also knowing that there's no consequences
Yes.
for that sort of language that's used, or those sorts of sentences that are used in that context. That there's a lot of talk on behaviours in hospital and violence and attitudes towards nursing staff that are horrible, but there's never really any emphasis on the vice versa, like on the flip side.
And most of it's so subtle and so coercive. Like I've had where I've actually plucked up the courage to put in a complaint against something that had been done, and only to be just belittled and berated and just like you just don't like it's very complicated. You just don't understand. You know, it was always just pushed straight back on me. Like I'd clearly done something wrong, or I just didn't understand it, so therefore it's all my fault.
Some of that messaging that I heard from medical professionals, I guess, strengthened negative thoughts that I already had about myself. It just made me question whether it was actually real, and also made me think that, I wasn't worth helping.
You know, validation, empathy. Don't judge people. Treat their pain with respect. They're courageous enough to share it with you. Don't roll your eyes or ask, what's she doing here? Or it's not rocket science. It's not complex.
Had I been treated differently when I first went to seek help, I think I could have got treatment a lot sooner and could have been way more functional and had a way more full life at a time in my life that was, it's your teenage years, it's quite pivotal. And I think for a lot of that, I was not functioning very well.
There's nothing wrong with not always being able to bring your full compassion and empathy and everything. But if this is a consistent thing, I really feel like these are the people that need to get out of the system.
Yeah.
You are consistently unable to show empathy and compassion to people who are experiencing a life that you, for the most part, probably cannot understand. I'm sorry, but you should not be in a supporting role, in a role where you are going to come across people who are deeply hurt. It is not right, and it is a violation of duty of care.
I think like most people who've accessed mental health services, I've had both positive and negative experiences with general practitioners, but I happen to have found a really good one. She was really pivotal in making me feel like I was worth supporting when I didn't necessarily think that myself.
I've got a good relationship with my GP. If I'm really sick, I'll see her 2-3 times a week, and she's happy to do that. She's just there for moral support sometimes. It doesn't need to be like, do you need a script? Do you need this? It could just be, hey, how are you today? Let me check in on you.
Sometimes I just need my partner to be with me. So then if that's the case, my GP will, without hesitation, write a carer certificate so she can still be there and not have to worry about work. And I think having a number of people, not just one singular person that I can bounce back to if I need to, or if I need a bit extra help, whether it's for me or for my partner or anything like that. I think it's a bit of a relief, a bit of weight off my shoulders.
Thankfully though, I have a pretty good health team these days. I see a psychologist privately and I have a really good GP. We have constructed, because of my own ability now to articulate my life, we have constructed a whole range of ways of checking in. So if I'm talking about, I've been having the feeling they've been much more intense, there's a whole range of questions that my GP will ask and my psychologist will ask to sort of determine, is this something that's actually going to be a problem? Or is it that I'm just more intensely feeling something right now? So I'm really grateful to those people who have just been there at the right times.
There have been some doctors and nurses over the years that I do have to take my hat off to who have listened and have put in that extra mile. I used to get a nurse who'd come and see me at the residential facility that I was living at. He didn't have to do that, and I appreciate that now I look back on it.
Get a good nurse that is compassionate and understanding, and they just talk to you, I guess, like a human, they just talk to you in a conversational type of way, and they're genuinely concerned for your well-being. And
she just sat in my room with me and just did a jigsaw puzzle with me. She just kind of sat in there with me, and she didn't make me talk. She just kind of sat there and was there, and she brought me a hot Milo and that kind of thing. And then I think having someone remember me by my face and by my name, it was a lot more comforting, I guess, because I didn't feel like a number or just like a patient. Like, she remembered me as a person.
I remember once something that actually was really helpful was I was in an ambulance on my way to hospital one time, and a paramedic said to me, we got to find a better way for you to get help, love. And it was just so sincere and real, and I just thought to him, you're good, I like you, and that's always stayed with me.
Therapy has been really helpful individually.
I think one of the biggest things is establishing trust with an initial therapist. And it doesn't just have to be a therapist, it can be your GP. Like I've seen the same GP for over 5-6 years now. That can be really difficult initiating that, is that you do sometimes have to search around and around for the right therapist or the right GP. And it's okay not to like a certain GP or a therapist, that you're not a bad person because you don't gel straight away.
Your first counsellor may not be your best one either. Like you need
It's like finding the right shoes.
Yeah.
There's someone that's been really useful to me to help challenge my thinking and help, retrain some of my initial reactions to things and reframe the way I look at things. I've done some group therapy as well, which was actually really useful because I'm somebody who intellectualizes things a lot. So hearing somebody else say something and me being like, that's not true, I want to challenge that. Like, you're a worthy person. And then I would be like, oh, I think that too, was helpful to, I guess, be able to break through that intellectual barrier and be able to actually personalize things.
And people were just going, oh, but that sounds like depression, so it became depression. It's been interesting to work with a psychologist who's gone the other way. They're going, but does that sound like depression? How would you describe it? And it was just dumb luck that I ended with a psychologist who just absolutely was perfect for the sort of things that I needed at that time.
It's funny talking to the older generation, like, oh, what do you get out of these counsellors? They just talk and you do nothing. And I said, look, a problem shared is a problem halved, and it's just offloading stuff that you don't want to put it on those near and dear to you.
More recently, I guess, I've done some work with, so once a week I catch up with a worker from there, and he's really cool. We just hang out, have a chat, and I think it's just good to be able to talk to someone that's not in a medical setting, but also to know that if I do need that extra backup, that he's going to be there and he can talk to my doctor if I don't want to. I think it's just really easy to know that I can just, when I'm having a bad time, I can just send him a message. Even if he doesn't bring it up, he at least knows that when something's not okay. And then he can kind of keep tabs on when I haven't been okay, regardless of whether I say it or not. If I wasn't able to do that, I just wouldn't say anything. I'd just pretend I was fine the whole time.
Yeah, I had a lady from up until I was 25 who helped me out a lot, and I felt we had a great relationship. She, developed great rapport with me. I felt like I could tell her anything and that I wouldn't get in trouble and things like that.
What I found helpful is, that's also been really helpful. So they, if I really need to talk to someone, they're always, they're 24/7, 1-800 number. It's always open. They have a file on me, so they know my background. So they're not just making jump conclusions, so I just find that service has been really helpful in a lot of ways.
Social media is really important. I think it can really help people with those sorts of thoughts and ideas, and it's not just limited to social media, but there's a lot of different organisations who have an online presence, which means a lot to people because you can log in anonymously with some of them and discuss things that you're finding really frustrating. I wish I'd had that because I think it gives a person going through those sorts of issues a really powerful voice, and to have a sense of a community.
I think my first one was a Facebook support group. I just searched what I got diagnosed with, and it came up with, a support group for that, and I joined it, and there was 20,000 people with the same diagnosis, and I just posted. I was like, hi, I'm Brooke, this is me, and all these other people were like, yeah, this is what we go through too, and suddenly I just didn't feel so alone in the world.
I don't know, but I'm really sure that the more we can engage people with lived experience at all levels, support work levels, clinical levels, then I know that those people are less likely to judge.
They are immediately empathic, non-judgment and validating, and that enables a person to get into a space of looking for solutions instead of desperately clawing to justify why they need some help.
Peer support workers and the lived experience telephone support service that I find really helpful, because these people have lived in our shoes. They've got anxiety, they've got depression, they've been where we've been, so they understand what we're going through. You know, I wish there was more of them. I wish they were in hospitals. I wish they were in doctor surgeries. I wish they were everywhere, because they know how to, I guess, calm you, or they know how to help you when you're in a crisis. And yeah, they've got the insight that you can't learn it, you know, from a textbook, I guess.
I think having lived experience myself helps when I am helping other people. I can help them to understand how they can navigate the system to get the support they need, because I've been there. So, you know, I can give them some helpful tips and tricks to help them get the help they need. I sometimes use the analogy that getting help for mental health is like buying a pair of scissors that you need scissors to get into. Like, you know, those ones that are like so sealed that you like literally need scissors to cut open the blister pack. Sometimes it's like that with mental health services. It's like you need really good mental health to access mental health services.
And a lot of the problem is that we're not evaluating our services. We're not asking the people that are using the services, if they're lucky enough to get them, we're not asking them, how was that experience? We're not learning. You know, people that present to ED multiple times, they're coming back for a reason. They're coming back because the treatment that they got didn't work.
It'd be cool if you could call a number like 000 and, I don't know, a team of people could come to your house and just sit with you while you're having a crisis, you know, instead of having to go to hospital. Or they could treat you in your own house. It's safe, it's, you know, it's comfortable, it's what you know. If we could have like a 24-hour place that you could go, almost like an emergency department, but it's a place of comfort and empathy and people understanding. Maybe it's filled with peer support workers. Maybe when you get there you get a nice warm blanket, or, you know, it's somewhere you feel safe, and, you know, you might be having a panic attack, or you might be really distressed and suicidal, and you're just going to feel loved, you know. The place where you know you can go any time of the day. You could go 20 times in a week and nobody's going to judge you, and you can get the help that you need.
I was so lucky back then because we had this amazing program called Hospital at Home. For a month, they would come to the house twice a day. They would just sit with me and talk. They would reinforce that I was coping. It was a real amazing safety net that absolutely, I have no doubt that it saved my life. That service is no longer available, unfortunately.
I was able to, quite luckily, get into DBT twice and take the therapy seriously. It's quite intimidating for a male to be in that sort of therapy, because I think I was the only male out of 9 women in that group. But I still gave it a go, and I still tried, and I did a lot of the homework, and I feel I'm at a stage now where I can manage the BPD very, very efficiently and well. I did that treatment much later on in life, but it always makes you wonder what would have happened if that had been offered before. Would it have been as effective as it has been now?
How do we make sure that medical professionals are well versed and they can help direct people as required? But also, how do we help consumers of mental health services know what's out there, and how do we help them know what they can ask for and what's acceptable and what's not? You know, how do we help them to advocate for themselves? And that's a difficult thing to do when you're in a tough place.
I remember Jerry Farmer, who had mental illness. He came up to me and he got through it really well, and he said, you know, all I have to talk to every day is cows' bums. He said, that's all I see all day. And I thought, That's true. You know, so many farmers out there, or rural people. You know yourself, when you're alone all the time, you haven't got anyone to bounce the ideas off, and things just get worse and worse. And I also think in rural areas, perhaps there needs to be a bit more training for people like
The stock
your
agent.
stock agents, and we're in a vineyard area, so maybe
Your winemakers.
winemakers and
or-
viticulturalists and
Yeah.
just people that, and perhaps a bit more for farming groups like dairy farmers and
So I just want there to be more resources, especially for the wider communities and people, especially people that can't afford it, or they're not readily able to just pack up and come to the city or anything like that. It's just, it just needs to be more accessible. Because back home, I had to come to Adelaide every time I had an appointment. Like, it was ridiculous.
My dream would be to have a mental health ambulance as such. So if an ambulance goes out and says, all right, this person looks like suicidal, or even somebody died. So having a mental health ambulance, that would still call 000, and those people would go out and counsel them, help them, and be like, okay, they'll counsel them on the scene.
I think if you can have the community support that, you know, stops you from needing to go to emergency as often, you know, if you have a psychiatrist or a psychologist, if you have people that you can see regularly, you know, it doesn't just add up and, you know, I guess build up, and then one day you need to go to emergency.
if you can nip a lot of these things in the bud before they actually get so much bigger, it's going to save a lot of lives.
If you've got a broken arm, everyone sends you flowers and chocolates, and, you know, if you're having a suicidal episode, people are just like, oh, you'll be right. You don't see it much in the news, or you don't see it in the advertiser, or you don't, you know, see it on social media. You know, people need to know it's okay to talk about mental health, and, you know, hopefully with that it'll break the stigma around mental health and people will start speaking up more about it.
So when I was a teenager was probably the first time that I experienced suicidal thoughts, and I didn't have a lot of capacity to deal with it at that point. I didn't know anybody who had spoken about being suicidal before. The only things I'd seen about being suicidal were just in the media, and they were very, you know, dramatic and over dramatized and stigmatized as well. So I guess when it first came up for me, I thought, oh no, I'm going crazy. Or, oh no, this is kind of my life finished now, because that's the way it's portrayed a lot in the media.
Movies and TV shows and all that kind of thing, I think there's always a negative spin put on it, whether it's intentional or non-intentional. And I feel like that negative spin, as long as that's there, it's always going to make the stigma there.
There's a lot of stigma still around mental health. And I think from a social perspective, we need to be talking about it more to show that, look, just because you have these thoughts and feelings doesn't mean you're going to act on them. And I think that's what a lot of society and the community thinks, that by talking about these things, you're just going to be throwing people into like copycat scenarios. Which
If I could go back and tell myself as a teenager something, I guess I wish I knew that it is important to talk, whether it's about what was going on in the background or what I was feeling. I feel like I wish I'd known back then how important it was to talk about it. It is okay to have those feelings and those thoughts. It's normal. Like, it's not, as much as it's not spoken about, it's not an uncommon thing, and that it's okay to have them. It's just how you act on it and whether you ask for help or that kind of thing.
I think I would tell myself that I was not my trauma, and that I had the capacity of having like a really full and lovely life, like a life that I really enjoy, that was possible for myself. Because I think that when I was younger, I didn't think that was possible.
We're a lot stronger than we realise, you know. At the moment you think, nah, I'm not going to get through this, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow morning, but you find a way, you do.
You have no idea what you're about to go through. but you're going to be okay. Hold on to those dear people near you. Your mum is your rock, your sister's your rock. Just lean on them as much as you can, and they need to lean on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable yourself, and this is so hard, try and find someone who you do feel comfortable with to be with you as you learn to speak up for yourself. And that can be really, really hard. Don't give up. There's always hope, whether you see it or not. So, and don't stop screaming, don't stop yelling, don't feel that you should hide away or go quiet because you're not being heard. Be patient with mental health professionals. They've got a lot to learn.
I know it's hard. Sometimes you have to bang on a number of doors, but keep trying. Don't give up hope, because there is hope. There are lots of us that have survived and in fact thrived, and there is hope.
Another quote that I've come across, which I think is really clever and just a nice little play on words, which I always appreciate. I actually have it blue tacked up on my fridge, and it says, "You alone can do this, but you can't do this alone." That sort of thing. So you alone as a human, you can do this, like you got this. But like without, clinicians or family or supports or, whoever you need by your side, you can't do it without them. You're not going to be able to do this all by yourself. But you alone can do it, but you can't do it alone. And I love that one.